Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, we want to be a place where we can be, belong, and become the very best versions of ourselves. And so, wherever you are watching from, I get messages from people in Ohio, Tennessee, Arizona, Florida, Colorado, all over. Orange County, obviously. We're getting lots of people who are joining in and all experiencing some really cool conversations and a lot of growth. And so thank you so much for joining us every week. And as always, I want to remind you, please, if you find these videos helpful, please consider liking, clicking that little bell, the notification bell, and sharing these videos as often as you can. And if you want, please consider donating to www.ethos-church/donate. That is so helpful for us. I'll give you a slide at the end to remind you of that. But anyways, all to say, thank you so much for joining us. We have been having a blast with this new series over the Sermon on the Mount, and we're calling this A New Way to Be Human, right? Because that's the point of the message. Over and over again, Jesus is not sharing a theological message that, get your stuff together, or I'm going to be really mad. Someday I'm going to come back and burn you all. That's not the message. That's not the message. The message is not, hey, we're going to escape this place. We're going to get on an asteroid and just leave. That was not the message either. The beautiful message of Jesus was we can live heaven, love, reality, tikkun shalom, all of it. I just said tikkun alom instead of shalom. That's so funny. But all of it, we can experience that right here, right now. We can have heaven on earth, and it starts here. And so Jesus' whole message on the Sermon on the Mount is basically, again, just to recap, his message is very similar to that of Moses. And so what Jesus is doing, again, he's like taking the law, what Moses did on his mount, and he's taking it and he's looking even deeper at the heart of it. And he's saying this is why this message is such a beautiful gift, because it's actually a blueprint of how to live life more abundantly. It's how to do this thing right here, right now. It's not waiting, it's living it. It's embodying it. And so again, the Sermon on the Mount is actually a deeper critique into the heart of the law. It reclaims the beauty of living life in harmony. And so again, I'll remind you, this message in this first century from the gospel writers, this message was not intended for 21st century people like us. They weren't even thinking about us. I'm not even sure they thought the world would continue that way. I don't know. But what the message was, it was for them. It was for a Jewish people who just lost their temple. Again, they watched as thousands of their own people were starved to death as Rome was gathering around the walls, essentially cutting off all supplies to Jerusalem. And they let the people there starve to death. And when they got so weak, that's when Rome came in and they just mass murder. It was disgusting, it was terrible, and their temple completely destroyed. And in that moment, and in the moments after, they are asking the question, where is God? And how do we respond to tragedy? Where is this life more abundantly? How do we live it? And that's when the writers begin writing the messages of Jesus. And that's when it's shared. And the reality is the gospel writers, they're writing 20 to 50 to 80 years after the death of Jesus. And so again, it's a brilliant, brilliant message for a very present reality people who are hurting and broken. That's the message. And so again, Jesus shares the law 2.0, and he begins it like most rabbis would do. He begins it by sharing blessings. And again, these are things, again, happy are you, fortunate are you if you choose to live life like this. If you choose to, in the face of pain, brokenness, if you choose to turn the other cheek, love each other, if you choose to do this, you are blessed. And so the next one we're going to talk about is from Matthew 6. And Matthew 6 is a really interesting one. It's actually one of my favorites, but there's some really deep, deep stuff going on there. And if we can kind of move beyond the surface, we'll find some beauty. And so here it is. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. They shall be satisfied. And again, we know the writers, they're borrowing right? They're borrowing from the Old Testament. And so any Jewish person hearing this, they're immediately connecting. They're saying, oh, that's from Deuteronomy. That's from Deuteronomy. That's Deuteronomy 8:3. Because again, any good Jewish boy and girl, they have memorized Torah, right? The first 5 books of the Old Testament. They've memorized these books. They have to go before their rabbi and they have to quote certain sections of Torah that only the rabbi knows to ask. And so they know these scriptures backwards and forwards. And so Deuteronomy 8:3, it says this, so he humbled you by making you hungry and then feeding you with unfamiliar manna. He did this to teach you that mankind cannot live by food alone. Again, remember Jesus' words, man doesn't live by bread, but also by everything that comes from Yeshua's mouth. So again, the idea here is when we hunger for something deeper than bread, when we hunger for something deeper than vengeance and those things that are just so temporary, when we hunger for something deeper like righteousness, then we're satisfied. So I want you to think about this. I love the word hunger here. Hunger, the word, it means to desire deeply. And the word picture again is someone who is hungry for food. They're actually starving. And so think about this. What do you desire that much? Like, what is it that your soul craves on a daily basis? Because some of these ancient writers, they say where that desire is where your heart is. And so most of the things you do on a daily basis are going to be connected to that deepest desire. And so it's interesting that they would say, let your deepest desire be of righteousness. And again, righteousness not being, I have now obtained like some form of perfection. That's not righteousness. Righteousness is this idea. In the Greek, it's right living. In the Hebrew, the idea is I'm living life more abundantly. Beautiful, right? Seek righteousness. Let that be your main desire. So again, righteousness, shalom, nothing missing, nothing broken. Let that be your desire, not revenge. Not whatever the newest fad is, not the next iPhone. Let your deepest desire be that of righteousness. So here's the thing, over and over again you see in the teachings of Jesus, especially on the Sermon on the Mount. The teaching is desire peace more than revenge. And so again, remember who the audience is. You just had everything taken from you. You just lost family and community and your place of worship. And essentially, you're God, right? You just lost all hope. Desire peace more than revenge in this moment? Like, that's a really hard pill to swallow. Let your deepest desire after this moment of brokenness, let your deepest desire not be hate, but be love and peace with the very people who just destroyed your temple. Let your desire be for their good and yours as well. Because here's the thing. John Milton, from Paradise Lost, he writes this, and I think most of us would agree with this. He writes, revenge, at first though sweet, bitter ere long, back on itself recoils. Revenge is never satisfying, is it? When you finally get revenge, when you get the thing, when you get back at a person, it usually doesn't last long, does it? In fact, you usually feel a little bit emptier. And that's why in Romans, Paul writes this, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Consider what is good before all people. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all people. And again, I love this. Notice he writes all people. I think it's very easy to love the people we agree with on social media, isn't it? It's very easy to get in our little chambers, right, our echo chambers, and agree and write great messages back and forth. But what of the people who we disagree with? Because Paul's message is essentially the same message of Jesus. Love everyone. Love everyone. So hard. So hard. Do not avenge yourselves. dear friends, but give place to God's wrath. Again, I think that's interesting. If you want wrath, don't take it yourself. If you want wrath, let karma take over, right? And maybe even get to the place where you can go even beyond this verse, where you can say, I don't wish what's coming to them for a second, but I know how naturally things happen. And when you are a complete a-hole to everyone around you, things typically will happen to you. But I wouldn't even wish it on that person. Wouldn't that be an interesting way of living? Go even beyond that. I would hope that if this God is a God that gets back on my enemies, I would hope that this God would actually bless them. What if we went that far? And again, you go in that direction, you're actually walking in the footsteps of Jesus. You're walking in the footsteps of Jesus. So I wanted to share with you, there's a really interesting experiment that was done. And as I was reading it, I thought, I could see myself getting really frustrated. I could see myself actually joining in the ranks of the group that you'll find here. It hit home, and I'm going to quit talking about it. I'm going to actually tell you what happened. So this group, this was an investment experiment. And so this happened on a college campus. And so what they did is they took everyone in this group, and they said, look, here's the rules. We're going to invest. We're going to invest in something, and you're going to get a pretty good return. And so if everyone invests, everyone is going to benefit equally. So if you all invest the same amount, everyone's going to experience the same kickback, right? But if one of you in the group chooses to invest more, they're going to get more, and the group is going to get less. Yeah, right? And so here's the thing. They basically put in a little spy, and this was called the secret investor. And again, they called him the free rider. And this person was working with the actual people who put on the study. So they kind of knew what was going on beforehand. And so what this person did is they came into the group and they said, hey guys, let's definitely all invest. Let's all invest the same amount because I think it's better for all of us if we all agree. And he waxed eloquently. He got everyone on board, and everyone gave the same amount, except for the free rider. And so the free rider, what happened is he didn't go along with the same plan that he convinced everyone else for. And so in the end, this guy, he earned $5.59 more payoffs, and the rest of the group only got $2.51 payoffs for the investments made. And so again, interesting, and the group was irate. The group was so mad because this guy made a bunch of money and they made money, but not as much money. And so what was really fascinating about this study is the facilitator, he came to the group and he said, look, this is what happened. And you didn't make as much as you could have. And they were all mad. And he said, but here's the catch. He said, we're going to give you the opportunity to get revenge on this free rider. But here's the catch. You have to spend more money. You can get revenge, but you're going to have to spend money from the money you made. Right? So they already made less, and they were going to have to spend more to get revenge on the guy. And here's the thing. Most of us right now, we're thinking, oh, save your money, right? But in the heat of it, when you are angry, when you want revenge, when someone has done you wrong, sometimes we don't always think so clearly. And so what happened is every single person in the group, they chose revenge. And here's the kicker. After they got revenge on the guy, right, his stock goes down a bit. After they get revenge, they polled all the people. And they asked, do you feel better or worse after getting revenge? And the answer shouldn't surprise us. The answer by everyone was, no, I feel worse. I feel worse. I got my revenge, but I feel worse about it. And so the question, of course, is how do we learn then to desire peace more than revenge? Because I think it's very easy to talk about we need to be people who desire peace more than revenge. We want to be those kind of people. We want to live that way. But how do we build that inside of us? How does that become a desire? How do you build a desire? How do you ingrain that thing inside of you? Because again, for the Israelites, these people who over and over and over again have experienced brokenness, their desire often was revenge. And no wonder when you look at the Old Testament, there's so many moments where there's just bloody, bloody battles. And you have these weird moments where, again, you can kill this person, but not this person. You can kill these, kill the pregnant women, their babies. It just gets crazy. Because when revenge is your desire, things begin to fall apart, and it feels good at the time, but afterwards, right? It just doesn't satisfy. And so how does a group of people like the Israelites who have been broken over and over and over again, how do they change the chemistry of their very soul into wanting to desire peace over revenge? So what I did is I took some time, and again, every time we share conversations and talk about the narrative of the Bible, I think it's so important that we learn how to do the thing we talk about. Because if there's no application, then there's no real purpose to it at all. And so how do we learn to desire peace over revenge? Well, the guy that actually did the study, his name is Kevin Carlsmith. And Kevin Carlsmith, again, psychoanalyst, researcher, what he did is he wrote some of these ideas of how to kind of reprogram the brain. How to reprogram the brain toward desiring peace over revenge. And so he gives a couple ideas that I wanted to share with you. And some of it's a little wordy, so I'm going to do my best to kind of move through it with you. But the number one thing is, he said, accept your urges and thoughts of revenge as a basic human response related to trust. So for me, when I heard that, I thought, wait, trust has nothing to do with it. But then when you think deeper about it, the reason you're angry is because trust has been broken, oftentimes. And so listen to what he says. Trust is important in any relationship and critical for cooperative societies. When you are thinking about revenge, it usually means you believe that trust has been broken. Remember, while the anticipation of revenge may feel pleasurable, and I think all of us have had those moments, right? You're imagining karate kicking the person. You're imagining getting back at them somehow in some fantastic, epic way, right? But while it seems pleasurable, the actual carrying out of revenge brings little satisfaction and may create more problems and suffering. Acts of revenge do not repair trust or reestablish a sense of justice for both parties. There's a deeper issue going on when we feel hurt by someone. And oftentimes it's because we trusted a person. And now I'm thinking more and more individually, right? In our own lives with our friends and people close to us. Oftentimes when we are hurt, there's been some kind of trust that's been broken. And so he says, understand that response is a human one, it's a normal one, and understand the deeper issue might be that trust has been broken, or that maybe you had an idea of how the world should be, and it didn't quite play out. And maybe you're feeling deeply at the heart of it, really, really disappointed. Maybe you had an idea that God was going to sweep in and take care of the thing, and didn't. And so deep down there is this disappointment, this pain, this feeling of trust broken, whatever it is. When you get to the heart of that, understanding it, then you can move toward understanding the deeper underlying issue and move toward desiring something better. And so the next one he says is this, and I love this, and I think we rarely do this in our culture. He says, spend time with peace. It's almost like peace is this allegorical thing. Spend time with peace. And think about this. In our culture today, everything is so, it's just, everything revolves around conflict, right? The news essentially only broadcasts what's wrong with the world. When we look at movies, there's always got to be a conflict. There's always got to be brokenness. There's always got to be someone being hurt, right? And someone getting revenge. And you never hear about years later after the person got revenge, do you? because that wouldn't be an interesting story, would it? So what he says is this, again, spend time with peaceful things. So choose to surround yourself with messages of hope, peace, and restoration over violence and revenge. So I might ask you right now, like, what kind of movies are you watching? And again, I hate to be Debbie Downer, right? Because we all like a good Avengers flick, right? We all like those movies. But is that what I'm spending the majority of my time consuming, watching? Because if it is, whatever goes in comes out. And so when I'm in the middle of a conflict and I've spent time consuming things that revolve around revenge, it's not going to be a surprise when my response is like that. But if I am consuming things, surrounding myself with things that fill my life with peace, messages of hope, restoration, I'm going to emulate that. I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to model what's been given me. And so he says, choose better models, right? Surround yourself with peace. Beautiful. And then this one I thought was really, really good. Find the human in everyone. Again, I love this picture here, this picture of the skeletons, because at the heart of it, we're all just skin and bone, right? Skin, bone, and spirit. And so if I can understand that the person who hurt me is a person just like me, that I'm going to be able to find the humanity in them, and I'm going to have a desire to essentially forgive rather than seek revenge. I'm going to be able to live in that feeling of desiring love and peace, because I understand that person is just like me. That person is another human being, and they may not be handling things great, but I may not either, right? And so remember, we're all human. We're all human. And the last one I really enjoyed was learn from the experience, right? John Dewey writes, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. Yeah, you might have a billion experiences, but if you haven't taken time to reflect on them, then you're never going to change patterns. We're never going to change. And that's why, again, the Hebrews over and over again, they wrote constantly of their experience. And what they were doing is they were writing the experience down so they could reflect and learn from it. They were writing their stories, their epic narratives, all of it in order to remind themselves. Remember this so we don't repeat it. Remember this so we can break certain cycles. Remember this so we can live like that instead of that. And so let me read it, the slide there. Were there signs of problems that you ignored when you're looking back on that situation? Were you careful about who you trusted? What positive changes can you make based on what you've learned? How do you see yourself as a result of this experience? Did you make decisions that show self-respect and reflect your values regardless of how the person behaved? Again, ask yourself those kind of questions. And again, when we do, the desire will change. When I begin living and sitting in those kind of questions and I begin putting myself in their place, that's when desire begins to form for peace over revenge. And it happens right here in the heart. So how do I learn to desire love over hate? One of my favorite stories. There's a story about a wise man. And this wise man had many followers. These students would come from all over. And this wise man, he was very good at creating metaphor and teaching these different allegorical pieces and putting his students in these, right? And people, again, flocked from all over. He had this one student that came to him, and he asked this very question: how do I learn to desire love over hate? How do I learn to desire this? How do I reprogram my brain? The question we've been asking. And so the teacher, again, wise teacher, he says, you know what? You haven't learned to swim yet, have you? And then the student kind of looks at him like, wait, what? What does swimming have to do with my question? The teacher says, meet me at the pond. Meet me at the pond, and I will share with you the answer to your question. So the guy, okay. So he gets dressed, shows up there at the pond. The teacher's there waiting. The teacher has him come out and wade out toward the teacher. And he gets further and further out to where his feet are just barely touching his he's barely above water. He's freaking out a little bit. And the teacher says, "Come forward a little more." And the student does, and he goes underwater. And the teacher grabs the student's head and pushes him under the water more. And the student is freaking out, flailing around. He's sure that this teacher has gone mad, right? Throws him under the water. The student can barely breathe. He feels like he's going to die. And just when all the air is about to come out, the teacher pulls him up and takes him to higher ground. They're still in the water. And he's just spitting up all this water. And he's looking at the teacher like he's gone crazy. And the teacher says this after the student is just coughing up and just looking at him wildly. The teacher looks at him, he says this, "Your desire for it must be greater than the air you breathe. It must call out to you from your inner depths and come forth in every word spoken and action taken. It must be like the air you breathe." Isn't that beautiful? What if I began taking these teachings of Jesus seriously? What if you and I chose to begin living in peace and responding in peace rather than revenge? What if I did it so much that it became such a pattern in my life that it was a heart thing now? What if I lived that way so much that my desire for everyone I met, whether it was my neighbor or an enemy, what if I lived that way so that my very desire for them was peace rather than revenge? And maybe when I do that, that teaching of Jesus begins to take hold. Maybe the teaching of Jesus, we can rephrase it like this: desire peace over revenge, and you will be satisfied. Because I think really that's where most of us are aiming. We want to feel satisfied. We want to feel whole. But the only way to feel somewhat satisfied, the only way to feel at peace and oneness with my community and those around me, even my enemies, is if I step forward and create the bridge. And the only way to create it is if I can learn to seek peace over revenge, if I can seek mercy, love, justice, if those are the things that my heart desires, if that's what pours out of me. Beautiful? Again, it's so incredible to me. Every one of these little blessings is just packed. It's just packed with so much. And so as we continue dissecting, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. It's Jesus' words are so beautifully written. And again, so beautiful because we can live them now. We can live them now. And so thank you again for letting me share some of that. I hope you'll continue joining us on this awesome journey through the Sermon on the Mount, A New Way to Be Human. And as always, please consider giving ethos-church.org/donate. Please continue supporting what we're doing. And again, it's almost tax season. Give that donation before the end of the year. You get that tax write-off from us. You'll get those papers later. Please consider donating. Please consider being a part of this ministry. And also living room sessions. If you're interested in joining us on the first week or the third week of every month, where we join together in community, we ask really difficult questions, and again, we do it all online in a safe space. If you want to join us, please email me at tonywerfel@gmail.com. Beautiful? Please do it. I think you'll remember. And lastly, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe. Hit the notification button. Join us every week as we continue moving through this on YouTube. Love you all. Take care. And as always, we'll see you next week.